Hello, this is David Hanna with Paystubz. This presentation you're about to listen to is in regard to time off and how an organization should or shouldn't manage their time off, their policy, the enforcement of it, and so on. So, as we get started here, first we're going to rattle off a little bit about myself. My name is David Hanna. I am the founder of Paystubz. I'm the one who started our business in January of 2008. We started with one client in January, and our first month of revenue was $438. And now we've grown nicely since then, and we serve over 280 clients. That includes over 14,000 employees across those clients. We deliver to our clients the Kronos Workforce Ready platform. That includes payroll, timekeeping, and HR applications, and more. And we also take care of those clients that use the payroll application and their payroll tax compliance work, payments and filings for the federal government of the United States and 38 individual states as well. And with those keep increasing every day with us. We're based here in Rapid City, South Dakota, in far western South Dakota, but our clients span somewhat throughout the nation. We have a couple clients way out on the East Coast, West Coast. The majority are in the northern Great Plains states, North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, and Wyoming. So that's a little bit about us, and you can read more at paystubz.com. So to get started in a little bit deeper sense of my own personal experience, my parents had a restaurant when I was a kid, and at about the age of 12, my dad, who was an accountant, somehow thought it was a great idea to teach his 12-year-old son how to do payroll for that small restaurant. So that was me. And so I was forced to use Publication 15 from the IRS and look up withholding tables and calculate using the adding machine with the big lever on the side and punching buttons on it to add up numbers, and learned how to use a 13-column pad and paper and pencil. So that's a little bit about my background there, and I went on to the University of South Dakota, got an accounting degree, and then I was a CPA in public practice for about 10 years. And then I went to work with a client in the hotel business and has helped them put together their management company. That included 350 employees across 7 entities, and we outsourced all of our payroll and the timekeeping to a national provider that had capabilities far less than we use at Paystubz today. But so I've been a customer of our style service. I've been a provider of it. I've been on the CPA end of it. And so I've got a well-rounded perspective, so to say. So with that, let's talk about time off. So in this presentation, we're going to talk about your time off policy, your adherence to that policy, your enforcement of it, your communication of the policy to your employees, and the requesting time off process, should you have an annual review of the process, and how to plan for change, and what's the future legislation going to look like in America as well as different states. So we got a lot to talk about it, so let's get going. So your time off policy, when did you last review it? Because you're probably listening to this thinking, well, I'm kind of in charge of this. When have I last reviewed it? When did you last sit down, read through it, and say, what if I'm a brand new employee at my organization? Am I going to understand this information? And then ask yourself, when was the last time you had to reference your time off policy? If you answer that question as often, as in, boy, I review that policy once or twice every couple weeks, that might be telling you that your policy might need to be rewritten. Because if you're reviewing it, it means you're probably getting questions of people not understanding your policy. So it's cause for internal reflection when it comes to your time off policy being questioned like that. But then the question is, can your employees read their policy at any time? Do they have a copy of it readily available for your time off rules? How do you earn it? How do you use it? What are the requirements? And have you ever asked your employees or had a little group of them sit around over a business lunch, just bring in some sandwiches to your organization or your place of work, and sit down and review the policy and let them make suggestions for edits to hopefully make your time off policy a very meaningful benefit for your people? So I ask those questions to hopefully cause some good reflection and have you wonder about it. Here at Paystubz, we do review our time off rules. Oh, I can't say we do it every year. I'd be a liar if I said that. Well, we do at least every other year, and we have made changes here and there, especially when we get a really pointed question from an employee where we realize we don't have our language written very well. So with that, when you're thinking about your time off policy, what should that policy include? I mean, obviously you need your names and your categories of time off. You can name them whatever you want. How is that time off earned? How do people accumulate, and how do they get that time off awarded to them? Is it based on every hour that they work, or is it a little bit every single week that they're employed? How is that going to happen? And then what are your requirements to have them use it? Use it or lose it rules. Can they carry over balances? How are the rules there? And then what happens when a person quits or their employment's terminated by you? Do you pay out their time off? Do you not pay it out? The Family Medical Leave Act, how does that impact a person's time off? And what happens if I quit working for you and then you rehire me? Is that addressed in your time off policy? So ask some of your employees what they think. Seriously. You might be surprised at what you hear. And be sure you listen to them. Because if you're like me, I struggle to listen. It's easier for me to talk. It's hard for me to listen. But hopefully with age, I keep getting a little bit better. All right. So now that we've asked some pointed questions about your time off rules, so how would you evaluate your time off policy? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it ugly? A little Clint Eastwood reference for you there. So do you have clear, easily understood language? Never questioned by anybody. Everybody knows the rules. And boy, you're in great shape. But I'd still encourage you to review it periodically because times change, businesses change, your industry can change, state law can change, federal law can change. So even if you have a really good policy today, be sure you review it. But so which stage are you? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it ugly? So with that, let's talk about some phrasing and how you phrase the language in your time off rules. What I'm going to be showing you here on this slide in the next couple slides, these are actually taken from time off policies that we have with some of our clients. I didn't disclose the client names, but this gives you an idea of how easy it is to, it might make sense to you for how your policy is written, but will it make sense to your audience? So which of these statements would you more easily understand? After your first year of employment, you'll earn 3.08 hours per biweekly pay period. After your third year of employment, you'll earn 4.615 hours per biweekly pay period. That seems pretty clean to me, pretty easy to understand. Or you receive 3.08 hours with 1 year of service and 4.615 hours per pay period once you get to year 3. It's pretty obvious how the first statement is written much more clearly than the second. The essence is still the same. You got a pretty good idea what's meant by them because the numeric values were the same and the year thresholds were the same. But you notice in that statement 1, the word after is used. And for us, we have to take the language from a client's policy and make our software that we deliver to our clients do what the client's policy says it should do. So when we're doing that, those operative words such as after indicate that once you've completed your first year of employment, that's when you begin to earn the 3.08 hours, like in that first statement. But if you don't say the word after, like in the second statement, you receive 3.08 hours with 1 year of service. Okay, does that start at the beginning of my first year of service, or is it after I've completed it? And again, that's where the word after is really, really helpful to make sure you have clear language there. Oops. Here's another example. And so this is a listing of PTO or paid time off accrual rates that were in a client's handbook. And so you notice the columns are laid out and it looks pretty clean. And so, and this is a sample as it's indicated in that particular client's. Actually, this wasn't from my handbook. I forgot to read the top of my slide. I actually stole this right off from Indeed. It was on a job listing. I was poking around in there. Not for my own self. I wasn't applying for jobs. I was actually looking to see how jobs were being advertised. And so I stumbled into this. And so you notice that they show this example, and they show the years of service, less than 1 year, and then 1 to 4 years. So then my questions are, like I indicated at the bottom of this slide, for 1 to 4 years measured how? If I work 39 hours, do I earn nothing? Because that middle column says PTO accrual rate per 40 hours worked. If I work 39.9, do I get nothing? Not sure. And this is 1 to 4 years. Is that after 1 year? And after the 4th year? So the beginning of the 5th year, I go to 3 hours? It's hard to determine that. So even though this was intended as just a sample on an Indeed job advertisement, it's still really tough to understand. And then somebody that you hire from Indeed, it might carry this with them and go on, hey, I understood your example to mean this, but you're only awarding me this. So once again, the clear language and good phrasing is a really big deal. And here's one more. This is the one that I did take from a particular client. And so you notice the length of service over to the left, and I highlighted these areas. And then, because they say that this is the schedule, and it's hours of paid personal leave based on the hours worked. So you see the full-time equivalent and the part-time equivalent. So then you'll notice that in that language, for the way that's written out, when an employee is on paid personal leave, the employee continues to accrue paid personal leave. So as you're taking time off, you're still earning time off for the hours that you took. And so that might seem illogical to you. But some clients where I've seen this type of policy before, I've asked them, I go, why would you let somebody earn more time off while they're taking time off? It really doesn't make any sense to me. I'm an accountant by trade, and I don't get that. But the reasoning is before they switched over to us here at Paystubz, their software they were using at the time could not handle the calculations properly, so they just said to heck with it. We're just going to, when people are taking time off, they can earn time off, because otherwise the math is too difficult for our software and we have to deal with it manually. That's how that happened. So my point being is if you change software or move to a better piece of software, don't forget to update your policies, because there are times, for instance, in time off policies, they were written when you were working with a piece of software that made the calculations really difficult and you had to do manual work. And you wrote your policy in a way to accommodate the software. But if you're using some nicer software, make sure you consider adjusting your time off policy to match your software capabilities. So that's that point. So then on that length of service piece, back on this screen, right here, so that 0 to 59 months of service, 60 to 119. So what happens when a person hits their anniversary date in the middle of a pay period? Which rate does a person get? At which rate will they earn? So for instance, right here, 0 to 59, I switch from 59 to 60 months, and it's in the middle of a pay period. So then which rate do I get? That's not addressed in this particular area. But in our software, it's actually a setting in the software to tell the system when to cut off a person and move them to their new higher rate when they've attained a certain level of service with the company. So anyway, it seems really nerdy. It seems really picky to some people, but when you're setting up software to abide by a set of rules written by humans, that's when you really uncover good language in a policy and bad language. So, and a couple other examples here, the full and part-time examples. My argument would be, why even have these stated? Why not just state the hours paid times the tenure-based multiplier equals the accrued amount? Because what is part-time? Is that 18 hours, 15 hours, 20 hours, 32 hours? What is deemed part-time? So anyway, still room for confusion there. So that's some issues with policy language. So you might be watching this and listening and thinking, there's that lump sum award rule. And we see it a lot with our financial institution clients, credit unions, and some banks. And it seems like the ones I've asked as to why they ended up with a policy this way, it goes back to, we didn't have any good software for it, and it was a lot easier to deal with the spreadsheet that we track time off hours in. So we just went with this route. This route being a lump sum award. So in the cases that I'm describing here, on January 1st of each calendar year, everybody in the whole organization gets a lump sum of hours based on how many years of service they have. So maybe up to the end of your third year of service, if you've completed that by January 1st, then you get maybe 120 hours. After people that are in their fourth, fifth, or sixth year get 180 hours and so on. But they just get that lump sum all at once in January. One of the biggest challenges with that is, what if a person goes and quits in February or the end of January, but they just got that big lump sum award on January 1st? Do they get all of their time off hours? So there's some real questions there that certainly need to be addressed. So some of the questions are, should you do this, say the first calendar day? The reason why some people say no, you should not, and the analogy is, you eat all the M&Ms before you left the parking lot. For instance, you used up all your time off by the end of March. Then what are you going to do? You're going to starve from April through December before you get your other time off. And then the person might complain that, hey, can I borrow against next year? Well, then you know how that goes, because then you make exceptions to the rules and you get yourself into trouble with other employees and so on. But the reason why some people say yes, I think awarding a lump sum is a good idea, is it's really easy for people to understand how many hours you're going to have and when you're going to get it. Brutally easy. January 1st, you get this lump sum, end of story, figure out how to manage it. And it's easy to administrate in a manual way without having to use software. It's easy to keep track on a spreadsheet. So that's some of the reasoning for why some people like that type of rule and why they don't. And again, every organization can be a little different. The industry can be different. And there can be some very compelling reasons for certain types of rules. So the policy and the lump sum award in North Dakota. This is something I stumbled across when I was putting this together, because I knew a lot of people listening to this will be employers that are in the state of North Dakota. But North Dakota has a specific codified law that says if, upon the employee termination, awarded time off not yet earned is allowed to not be paid. And so this makes the wording in your policy on a lump sum award scenario even more important. So back to this screen, this lump sum award concept. If you have that as a policy where people get that lump sum on their work anniversary date or say on January 1st, and you're an employer in North Dakota, you're going to want to check this out and make sure that your policy considers this, so you're not trapped into paying a big lump sum award for somebody that quits early in the calendar year. So anyway, I want to make sure I point that out for North Dakota employers. So now, how about you award the time off each pay period? Here at Paystubz, we do it that way. We're on a biweekly pay period, Sunday through Saturday, pay the following Friday, which out of all of our clients, I would say that Sunday through Saturday pay period, pay the following Friday, probably covers around 60 to 70% of our clients. And then another 20% are semi-monthly, and then the rest of the clients pay everybody monthly or in some weekly. So it's very common to award time off each pay period. So here are why some people like this rule. Here's why some people don't. So why some like it, it mitigates the reasons for not liking the awarding the lump sum. And that lump sum is people get that big pile, they use it all right away, and then they go through the rest of the year with no more time off. When you earn a little bit at a time, people take a little bit at a time in general. And so also a lot of people that award each pay period, they believe that their employees have a deeper sense of earning their time off a little bit each pay period. Versus that lump sum award, it really doesn't feel like they earned it in July because it's been there so long. So when you earn a little bit each pay period, people that are advocates of awarding each pay period think people feel like they earned it. But here's why some don't like it. Whoops. Let me go back here. Sorry, I got a little crazy with my mouse there. But why some people don't like it. It's too hard to administrate manually on a spreadsheet because you're always dealing with the calculations every 2 weeks if you're on a biweekly pay period. And that's true. Our software, the Kronos Workforce Ready platform that we deliver to our clients, handles this type of award methodology beautifully, as well as on a per hour worked basis. And then employees can struggle to understand how much they should or shouldn't be earning because there's so much math involved. It's hard for some employees to pay that close of attention. And some employees are better at math than others. So anyway, this I would say that each pay period is probably actually our most common policy that we see across our clients. So then we need to talk about a waiting period. So what are you going to do for a policy waiting period? And what I mean by that is if I just came to work with you today, do I have to wait 90 days to use my time off? But if I have to wait 90 days to use my time off, am I earning time off from my first day of employment to my 90th? Or do I start earning on day 91 and I can take time off on day 91 and later? We see that rule split up. We see waiting periods pretty often. And we see the waiting period split up between they can earn starting on day one, but they can't take hours until their 91st day. It's usually a 90-day waiting period. So my personal opinion on this, and some people think a good reason for a waiting period is because there's a standard wait for other benefits, health insurance, vision, dental, so on. But my own opinion on time off, I'm a big fan of the KISS acronym, keep it simple, stupid. And I'm a fan of the no need for a waiting period, other than maybe a rule that says if you terminate employment before your 90th day or earlier, then no amount of your earned time off is paid out. Or you can make that a year even. Double check your state laws. Some state laws have rules on not paying out earned time off. Like I just showed you the one for North Dakota. I've never studied all 50 states. I've only studied our immediate states in the South Dakota, North Dakota area. So, but then some of the employee questions that you're going to get regarding a waiting period is, can I earn time off during the waiting period and just not use it, or can I not earn and not use? Or if I can earn and not use, if I terminate before the end of the waiting period, do I get earned time off paid out? So those are the kinds of questions you need to answer in the affirmative when you write your policy or adjust your policy. So that's a little bit on waiting periods. Let's talk about use it or lose it, as in for your time off policy. When I get to my carryover period, and that carryover point in time is either my work anniversary date. Let's say I started working with you November 1st of 2020. Is my anniversary date for time off going to be November 1st of 2021? Or is it going to be January 1st of 2022? I have to get a full calendar year under my belt. So that's what I mean. When would a use it or lose it rule be enforced? Is it enforced on the employee's work anniversary year or on the calendar year basis? So be sure you write that and consider those dates to be well articulated in your policy if you do have a use it or lose it policy. And what I mean by that is if you don't use your whole balance of time off by your work anniversary date or say December 31st, you will lose a portion or all of that remaining balance. That's what I mean by use it or lose it. So instead of having such a harsh cutoff on that, and in all the rules I've helped set up for some of our clients and our people I actually asked our staff, what's your favorite time off rule to invoke in the software that your clients seem to like the most and think is the most fair? And it seems like instead of a use it or lose it rule, deploying a maximum running balance rule, meaning that at no point in time can a person ever accumulate more than X number of hours in their balance, forcing employees to take some time off periodically. Because you probably have some of those people that work with you, they just simply don't take hardly any time off. And it keeps accumulating. And if you don't have a use it or lose it rule or a maximum running balance rule, those balances can get really, really big and turn into a huge liability for the company, unless you have it well written and well established as to how much, if any, of a time off balance is paid out upon termination of an employee. So something to think about. And by the way, a use it or lose it rule in California, from what I understand, is technically illegal. So again, double check your state rules on these types of rules and contact your favorite labor law attorney, because that's not me. I'm happy to talk about this stuff. If you'd ever like to call me, I'd love talking about this, or fishing. It's one or the other. But we do enjoy talking about this. So then on your policy, do you want to be a little more generous in how you award time off to managers and executives? It's commonplace. We see it with our clients. You hired a mid-level manager or a new operating officer or vice president of some sort, a more senior level managerial position. And they showed up with you, but your time off rules say your first year you get 80 hours of time off. Well, a lot of people in middle management and on up are going to say, Yeah, I've been getting 4 weeks or more a year for a long time. There's no way I'm going back to 2 weeks a year. So it's perfectly okay, in my opinion, to let somebody step in to that middle tier or an upper tier of how much time off they get awarded each year. But I do like the concept of having one set of rules as far as max running balance, the user lose it rule, and those things. And I like seeing that, the longer you work somewhere, the more time off you can earn. That it just makes sense to me after all these different rules I've seen over the years. But but when it's all said and done, is have one overall set of rules, but maybe have different rates at which people earn time off. So it's a lot easier to set up in software with a baseline set of rules, but maybe different numeric values are applied to different managerial positions versus staff. And then I'm a big fan of the adage of if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. So, but everybody will have a different take. But I don't mind offering my opinion on this stuff because it's like everything. Everybody's got an opinion. So, all right. So some overall considerations to your policy when you're reviewing it and thinking about it and wondering if you should change something. So if you get, say, a new HR director or payroll director, who's ever in charge of enforcing your time off rules, could that person, if you get a new person in that role, could they step in and easily support your current rules, policies, and processes? It's always a good question to ask yourself. Because if it's not, and they're so highly unique and fragmented, I'd strongly encourage you to work with getting those more simple, because this should be a pretty simple transition process to a new person to oversee. And then check with your staff, like I said earlier. Do they truly like your time off rules and processes? Which, as I say that out loud right now, I realize I need to make some phone calls to some of our people and ask them their opinion of ours, because I haven't asked those opinions for a little while internally here at Paystubz. But and then the easier your time off policies are to manage, the easier it is to manage your compliance leave auditing. That statement is written for those financial institutions, credit unions in particular, because they have required leave for internal control reasons. A lot of them do, where a person has to take 5 continuous days off, or 5 days in a row, 5 operating days in a row, just for good internal controls, segregation of duties, things like that. So some good overall considerations there for you. So after we've beat up your policy for a bit and you've got it rewritten, it's in good shape, you're very confident in it, well, now what? Well, policy is only as good as it's enforced and adhered to. So I wrote no exceptions in here. And I write this hearkening back to my days after I left public accounting and when I went to work with the hotel management group that I worked with the family to help create over all their different properties. And I realized pretty quickly, as much as some people have some really tough stories in their lives and you want to be really, really nice to them, and you want to make an exception to the rule for that person, figure out a way to make an exception to the rule by being nice to them otherwise, but not making an exception to the rule, if you know what I mean. Be nice to them outside this rule. Because by making an exception, even though you ask them, don't tell anybody we made this exception for you, word will get out. It always does. Humans are human. People talk. And I'm just not a fan of making exceptions. I don't mind developing exceptions for everybody when that situation comes up that you haven't even thought through yet and you realize you better just change your policy a bit to allow for an exception. But I'm a fan of no exceptions. And then you build good expectations with new hires at all levels. When you let them know, and just very bluntly when you're reviewing that policy with them, hey, these are the rules. They are what they are. If you got a suggestion, let us know, but these are the rules you got to play by. And so if you say employees can't carry a negative balance, they cannot carry a negative balance and need to take unpaid time off in certain situations. To me, that is one of the absolute toughest rules to enforce in time off. Because somebody is probably, when they're ready to take a negative balance, is in a tough situation at home or the health of a loved one or themselves even. So there's some things you can do to create some rules outside of that, but that's one of them I've seen to be one of the hardest ones to enforce. If you do or don't allow a negative balance for time off, and if you do and a person needs to go in excess of that, that's when things get tricky. As you probably well know as I say that, because you've probably ran into it before. So So we talked about the enforcement a bit, and then communicating. I'm a fan of, you always have on your HR handbook, you have employees sign off that, yep, I read it, and most people just initial and sign and just breeze through it, and you hate to say it, but they probably really don't read it. Occasionally people do. But for your time off policy, because it is used on every single day in an operation, I'm a fan of carving out that sign off to be independent of the whole handbook, to sign off on those time off rules, to emphasize their importance, and gives you a chance to have a conversation with new hires about the time off rules and warn them of unpaid time off in certain situations to make the enforcement of the policy that much easier later. So building those expectations, starting with the new hires, can be a big, big deal and pay big dividends over a period of time. And then including people's time off balances on their pay stubs if you can, or providing software for employees to log into their own personal account and see their time off balance. That's what we do. We have a mobile app with our application where people can look at their time off balance, and if they're using the timekeeping side of the software, the employee can request their time off, subject to their manager's approval. And then annually, and again, this is one of those that I haven't done for a little bit internally, but ask a small group of a few employees to review the policy and suggest changes. And then for the suggestions that are made to you that you choose not, that you don't deploy, be sure you explain why to those employees why you can't accept their suggestion. Because when you explain the why, there's a compelling business reason that you believe in as to why you wouldn't accept the suggestion. And I think it's perfectly okay to explain that to them. Because if they know the why behind it, they won't, a reasonable human being shouldn't be offended by having their suggestion not accepted. So those are a few thoughts from me on communicating those policies. So then we've got the time off policy. We've reviewed it. We've deployed it. We've enforced it. And now it's time for that policy to be used, for somebody to request time off. What is your process? And so I'm a fan of the process being the same for everyone. So if you have, that manager that just would rather walk into your office and just say, hey, I'm taking this Friday off, I'm going to go out fishing. And that's it. That's their time off request. But everybody else has to fill out a form and give it to you. Or if you're using software like ours, that employee is requesting from their mobile phone or from logging into their account. But you have that one rogue manager that walks in and tells you when they're taking time off. I would strongly encourage you to not allow that. Again, I know it's easier said than done. But that enforcement and that consistency plays a big part for a long time for you. So is the process the same for everyone? And can the data move quickly, whether it's a paper form that people fill out or a web-based application or a mobile app like we have? Can the data move quickly to its final destination, and that destination being your person in charge of payroll? Because if you're using paper forms and those forms don't make it to your payroll person, bad things are going to happen on payday, and your hourly people aren't going to get paid for the hours they took off. And you might be nodding your head that, yep, that happens to us. I've talked to many, many clients that come to us and become our clients where they used to have that happen when they had paper time off forms before they moved to a web-based application and a mobile application for that. And so make sure that data can quickly move and move accurately. And is it clear when time off requests are due to payroll? So for instance, as this is getting recorded, it's during the times of COVID. So hopefully you're watching this well after that, and that's all a distant memory for us soon. But during the times of COVID, people have been gone sick or helping to care for somebody or on quarantine because they're exposed to the illness. All kinds of different reasons right now for why people might be gone. But when is that request for time off due? So if I'm sick today is a Tuesday, and this Saturday is the end of the pay period, and I'm going to get paid next Friday. When do I have to have that time off request submitted? Does it have to be by this Saturday, by the last day in the pay period? Whereas for us and our clients, that employee has to have that submission in by the end of the pay period. But when it's a paper form being handwritten and given to somebody, when do they have to get that to you? But so make sure that it's very clear to your people when those time off requests are due. And then that request for approval or declining their request needs to happen quickly. In my opinion, if it doesn't happen quickly, employees can get annoyed because they can't plan their non-work life. And time off is really important to all of us, me included. I love to fish, and I like to take time off to go fish. But if I had to rely on somebody to approve my time off, and I've got friends waiting to coordinate a quick weekend trip, and my manager or boss isn't getting back to me as to whether or not I can take this Friday off, I'm going to get peeved. And so then what used to be perceived as a benefit now feels like a burden when I request time off. And then if approval is going to be delayed, at least let the employee know why it's going to be delayed. So anyway, some candid opinions from me on that requesting time off process. So then planning for the change. So you've made these changes. Maybe you've adjusted your time off requesting process. And so I think it's really important to get staff level employees engaged before those rules are finalized, and even hear them and explain why you might not follow their suggestions. Like I said, it's not ruled by staff, it's listen to staff. And then communicate the change, in the coming months well in advance. And communicate the new rules, in my opinion, at least a month in advance so people know they're coming. There's no reason to be surprising them with things. People don't like surprises when it comes to their benefits. And even plan a 90-day review. People don't know you're going to do that 90-day review, but plan a 90-day review after the new rules implemented, and then annually thereafter. And don't be afraid to correct any misunderstandings, because the faster you correct those, the easier life is going to be for you and your people. So legislation in the future. As this presentation is getting recorded, it's November 2020. We just had a big election cycle in our country in many states. And so a lot of you know that the Families First Coronavirus Response Act is required sick leave and family leave with a payroll tax credit to reimburse the employer. It is one of the first COVID crisis-related pieces of legislation that Congress put out. It was mid to late March of 2020 when that became live. And if I'm a betting man, I think in 2020-21 we'll probably see an extension of that, because the coronavirus is still with us and hopefully going to be slowly fading soon. And then there's the Family Medical Leave Act. It's required unpaid leave for employers with more than 50 employees. But what's the future going to be? Because the FFCRA was the very first piece of COVID-related legislation that came out of D.C., and it was very quick. It was a very abrupt piece of legislation. My personal opinion is that by 2022, 2023, or 2024, one of those years, we are probably going to see an expansion of required paid leave by employers in the United States. There are a lot of different states that have it. California has it, state of Washington, the Twin Cities in Minnesota, Minneapolis, and I believe St. Paul is included in that, have some required sick leave. And out on the East Coast, New York City, I believe, and the state of New York. But I do think something like that is going to be coming very soon. And I say that just to be aware of it and make sure you keep a close eye on that legislation and make sure it corresponds well to your current time off rules. Because there may be exemptions in those future rules for companies that already offer time off to their employees within certain parameters. So that's my take on some future possible legislation there. And I am a betting man. I don't mind gambling a little bit. I'd place a small wager that we probably will see this. So that's what I got on that part. So thank you very much for listening. Again, my name is David Hanna with Paystubz, and you're welcome to contact me anytime to talk time off or anything else, payroll, timekeeping, and HR related. I'm always happy to talk, even if you don't pay us, still happy to talk to you and try and provide some help or a good resource for you so you can have a better day at work, which helps you have a better day away from work. So thanks again. Have a great day.